Do you ever feel like something's been ticking in the background, not loud enough to hear, but just enough to feel it? Like your gut knows what your mind's too afraid to admit? You weren't wandering, you weren't lost, you were being dragged here. Through every mistake, every silence, every door that slammed in your face. Every moment you thought you were off track, it was the track. The pain wasn't a distraction, it was the map. You weren't lost. You were being sharpened in silence. That's the part they never tell you, isn't it? That sometimes the darkest places are where the blade gets its edge. Everyone thinks silence means weakness, that if you're quiet, you must be confused, drifting, broken, invisible. But let me tell you something about silence. It listens, it records, and it builds something they can't see coming. While they were laughing, you were calculating. While they were talking, you were observing. And while they were celebrating their cheap victories, you were buried underground, growing thorns. They threw dirt on you like it was a funeral, like you were finished. But seeds don't die when they're buried, they start. You weren't crying for help, you were gathering. Gathering pain, betrayal, rejection, failure. Like fuel, because that silence wasn't emptiness. It was loading time. And now that you're almost ready, you can feel it, that pulse in your chest. That strange calm before the chaos, that pressure building behind your eyes like something's about to snap, not because you're broken, but because you're full, too full to keep playing along. See, they wanted you to believe you missed your shot, that you're behind, that you're late. But clocks lie when they're set by cowards. Your timeline was never theirs to measure. They looked at your stillness and mistook it for defeat. But that stillness was your forge. That silence was your strategy. You learned how to hide in plain sight, how to keep your hands bloody but your smile clean. You became the kind of storm that doesn't announce itself. The kind that makes people wonder why the sky suddenly went black. You ever watch people underestimate you with a smirk on your face? It's delicious. Let them toss around their fragile little egos. Let them post their hollow wins and fake smiles. Let them think they've outrun you. Because by the time they realize what you've become, you'll already be past them. And that's the twist, isn't it? They trained you without knowing it. Every insult was a rep. Every silence was a rep. Every room you weren't invited to built your discipline. You didn't break, you absorbed it quietly, patient. You didn't need a spotlight. You became your own fire. You didn't need applause. You found power in your own footsteps. They couldn't hear your rise, so they assumed there wasn't one. But oh, you were rising, just not in the way they expected, not the way that fits their rules. You were sculpting something raw, something that doesn't beg for attention, it demands reckoning. That's why you were kept out. You didn't fit. You couldn't be tamed. You weren't a piece on their board. You were the match ready to burn it down. And still, the silence didn't break you, it refined you. You learned how to speak without making noise, how to move without leaving tracks, how to hurt without showing blood. You became fluent in pain, fluent in patience. That's a language only survivors know. You didn't need rescue. You needed time. Time to become what they said you couldn't. Time to gather every shattered version of yourself and weld them into something too sharp to hold. You think you're just starting, but the truth is you've already survived what most couldn't. That silence you hated, it taught you. It fed you. It wrapped around you like a cocoon of rage and resolve. And now that it's time to rise, you don't need noise. You don't need permission. You just need to walk. Walk like every step is vengeance. Like your existence is the answer to every question they tried to bury. They'll look at you and ask, where did this come from? And you'll know. It came from the nights you stayed quiet, the days you wanted to scream but swallowed it. It came from the 1,000 times you held your tongue, clenched your fists and smiled anyway. It came from the silence, the sharpening, the suffering that didn't kill you but turned you into something they never saw coming. The pain wasn't punishment. It was preparation. But no one told you that, did they? They just watched. Watched you bleed, watched you fall, watched you choke back every scream like it was your fault for even feeling in the first place. They love pain when it's not theirs. Love to dissect it, mock it, pretend it's some kind of karmic joke. But what they don't realize is that pain, real pain, doesn't break. It builds you from the inside out. Pain doesn't show up with flowers and soft lessons. It arrives like a thief, like a storm, unannounced, unapologetic. And when it hits, it doesn't whisper, it howls. It tears you from everything you thought you were, everything you thought was stable. It pulls the rug, flips the table, shatters the mirror, and suddenly you're naked in front of every truth you tried to bury. That's when the real game begins. Not when you're winning, when you've got nothing left but breath and rage. See, people think strength is born in gyms and loud speeches. Nah. Strength is born in silence, in the hospital rooms, on the bathroom floor, in the middle of the night when your chest is caving in and nobody's calling back. It's built when the world forgets you and you're still here, still breathing, still putting one shaking foot in front of the other, not because you want to, but because you refuse not to. That's the difference. They gave up on you. Hell, maybe you did too. But your bones didn't. Your soul didn't. That's where the monster started to wake. Do you ever notice how pain has a rhythm? It visits in waves. It pulls you under just long enough to think you'll drown, then spits you back out, gasping. Then it leaves, comes back, leaves again. It's training. You thought it was punishment because it didn't come with answers, because nobody stood by your side and said this is part of the process. But that's how real preparation works. It doesn't. It just shows up, breaks you, and waits to see what you do with the pieces. Every sleepless night, every cracked smile, every time you clenched your fists and chose not to strike, those were reps. Pain isn't some random curse from the sky. It's an invitation to become what you never would have touched without it. What? You thought diamonds came without pressure? Thought warriors came from comfort? You had to be stripped of what you loved. You had to be betrayed. You had to lose. Not because you deserved it, but because that version of you couldn't carry what's coming. They looked at you like you were cursed, like you were damaged goods. And maybe, for a while, you believed them, but look again. You weren't being cursed. You were being carved, cut down, reshaped, reforged. Pain didn't take from you, it exposed you. Every fake friend, every lie, every mask you wore to keep the peace, gone. And what's left now? Something leaner, something meaner, something that doesn't flinch when it's tested. Most people walk through life hoping to avoid pain. You've danced with it, slept beside it. You've become fluent in its language. That's why you're dangerous now, not because you're angry, but because you understand. You understand that the world owes you nothing, that peace isn't handed out, it's earned, that you don't need applause to validate your worth. Pain taught you that. Pain taught you how to fight without fists, how to speak without words, how to walk into rooms that used to terrify you and take up space like you own the damn place. People think they want power, but they don't want the process that builds it. The lonely nights, the echoing silence, the rejection, the pain. You took all of it, swallowed it, let it scar you. And now you're not soft anymore. You're not confused. You're awake. And not just awake, aware. You can see behind the masks now. You can smell lies before they're spoken. Because pain didn't just prepare your body, it prepared your mind. You don't flinch anymore. Not because the world stopped hurting, but because now you know the hurt. You've mapped it. And when it comes again, and it will come again, you'll be ready. Not because you're fearless, but because fear doesn't own you anymore. Pain saw to that. Pain made sure of it. They never saw it coming, did they? The quiet one, the overlooked one, the joke to everyone else. But that's the trick. They only pay attention when you explode. Before that, you're invisible. You're background noise in their world of self-importance and fake perfection. But you've been studying, watching, collecting every sneer, every betrayal, every fake smile like ammo. Because some people get lessons from books. You got them from bleeding out alone in places no one even bothered to search. See, the thing about chaos is it tells the truth. It doesn't sugarcoat, doesn't lie to protect your feelings. It rips off your mask and laughs while you panic, but you learn to smile back. Because somewhere between being ignored and being broken, you stopped caring about their rules. The same rules that kept you down, made you play small, forced you to hide what you really were. Not weak, not fragile, not forgettable. No, you were becoming something else. Something they didn't want to believe could exist in someone like you. Pain isn't the villain. It's the mirror. It shows you exactly who you are when everything else is stripped away. When the applause fades, when the phone stops ringing, when no one's watching, what's left? That's the question they all run from, but not you. You ran toward it, danced with it, let it burn everything that wasn't real, let it torch the old you, the one who kept begging for approval from people who wouldn't even flinch. If you disappeared, that version had to die, and it did. Pain made sure of that. People love to talk about strength like it's a gym membership or a slogan, but real strength is forged in rejection. It's built from sitting in silence while your thoughts claw at your sanity. It's earned in those nights where your only company is your own mind, ripping you apart piece by piece. But you didn't run. You faced it. And now you've got scars that aren't just skin deep. They're woven into your character. And here's the part that makes them scared. You're not angry anymore. You're focused. And that makes you unpredictable. They'll try to rewrite the story, try to make it seem like you changed, like you switched up. Nah, you just stopped pretending. You stopped watering dead gardens, stopped begging to be seen by people who were blind by choice. And now, every time you walk into a room, you carry something they can't fake. Presence. The kind that doesn't need to shout. The kind that makes them uncomfortable without you saying a word. Because they know. They feel it. You've been through something. And it didn't break you. It built you. You remember how it felt, don't you? Sitting there, shattered, trying to make sense of why it had to be you. Why you were the one abandoned, cheated, blamed, forgotten. But now you see it clear. It was never punishment. It was transformation. They say God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers, but no one tells you how ugly that battle gets. No one warns you about the isolation, the panic, the rage. No one prepares you for the fact that the people who hurt you will sleep fine while you stay up trying to breathe through it. But here's where it flips. The pain stopped being the enemy. It became your teacher, and not the polite kind. No chalkboards, no soft-spoken lectures, no. This teacher breaks bones to teach you balance. It throws you into the fire, not to burn you, but to show you you're flame-proof. They thought you'd stay broken, but every time they knocked you down, you were collecting data, studying the pattern. And now you've got the kind of knowledge that doesn't come from comfort. It comes from surviving hell and still managing to laugh. You're not seeking revenge anymore. That would be too easy. No. Now you're aiming higher. Now it's about becoming so unshakable, so undeniable, that the very people who tried to erase you can't even look in your direction without being reminded of their failure. Not because you said anything, but because your existence now screams everything you used to whisper. And that's what makes it poetic. They underestimated you, treated you like background noise. But background noise has become the anthem. And the ones who wrote you off, they're just extras in a story they thought they were directing. Hand up. They laugh at the mask, but never question the face behind it. That's the real trick, isn't it? Everyone's so obsessed with the costume, the voice, the chaos, but they never stop to ask what built it. What made someone put on that smile in the first place? You think people snap all of a sudden? No. It's a slow process. Like watching ice melt from the inside. Like standing in the middle of a crowded room screaming and no one even turns around. That's where it starts. Not in madness, but in silence. The world teaches you early, blend in, behave, stay in line, and if you're different, if you think too much, feel too much, speak too loudly, they tell you it's wrong. They don't fix the pain, they just teach you how to hide it, dress it up in polite words and fake laughter. But what happens when the mask doesn't fit anymore? When you pretend everything's fine while you're crumbling inside? Not because you're weak, but because no one was ever meant to hold in that much weight alone. Everyone wants the version of you that's easy to digest, the one who doesn't ask uncomfortable questions, the one who shows up, smiles, and disappears quietly. They say they love authenticity, but only if it doesn't scare them, only if it fits their idea of what broken should look like. But you broke all wrong. You didn't sit still. You didn't beg for a handout or wait for permission to heal. You burned everything fake to the ground. And that's why they whisper now. That's why they stare. You remind them of something they buried. It's funny how they call you too intense when you finally stop lying about how bad it hurt. How fast they disappear when you stop shrinking for their comfort. But you know better now. You've seen what it looks like when love is conditional, when support only shows up when you're silent and submissive. So you learned how to stand without applause. You taught yourself how to breathe even when every voice around you said, "Why are you making such a big deal?" They don't understand that what broke you didn't just scratch the surface. It carved a message in your bones. The dangerous thing about pain is that it teaches you to see, not the filtered version of reality they post online, but the raw, messy, terrifying truth. You start noticing the lies in people's eyes, the cracks in their carefully painted smiles. You stop falling for empty words and start watching actions. And suddenly their little games don't work anymore. You've become immune to manipulation because you know what it feels like to be used, to be blamed, to be abandoned when you needed someone most. That kind of experience doesn't just teach you lessons, it rewrites your entire operating system. Now you walk differently, not with arrogance, but with awareness. Every step you take is calculated. Every silence is intentional. You're not reacting anymore. You're responding. You're not chasing anymore. You're attracting. And they hate that because they can't figure out where you went. The version they could control is gone. The version that begged for love, that settled for crumbs, that accepted being misunderstood, that version is ash now. And what rose from it is someone they can't manipulate, someone they can't predict, someone who doesn't play by their rules anymore. You learned to stop asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What now?" You stopped waiting for closure and started creating distance. You stopped explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you, and in that shift, you reclaimed something priceless. Your power. Not the kind that needs to scream or prove anything. The kind that just exists. Quiet, unbothered, unshakable. You no longer need revenge. Your growth is loud enough. Every time you choose peace over chaos, solitude over fake company, clarity over confusion, you win. They thought the story ended when you fell, when you disappeared, when you stopped showing up, but that was just the intermission. You weren't gone. You were transforming. You were learning how to carry yourself differently, learning how to live without validation, how to sharpen your instincts, how to trust your own voice over the noise of the crowd. You weren't lost. You were recalibrating now. Every move you make is intentional. Every word you speak carries weight. And even your silence is louder than their screams.